Try so I don't do distractions.
Man, I think we're gonna have a field day with this video right here.
I think it'll be interesting.
I think this is gonna be a real tough video. I expect to see a few people on here, not gonna lie. But let's go ahead and Yo, what it do? It's your boys Juice and Lou. We back here with another NBA banger. It says the worst moves of the NBA offseason. We're going to go ahead. We're going to dive into it, man. I can't talk. Let's go ahead. Let's get into it.
We have a new winner for the worst contracts in the NBA. Now, the league has gotten smarter about this over the last handful of years. Like, the John Wall contract is now expiring. The Russell Westbrook contract is now expiring. And there's not a ton of other deals around the league that you would look at and truly say, like, that is an unbelievably awful contract. The Wiggins one looks a lot better now. Like, there's not a lot of Chandler Parsons, Zion Mahinmi contracts out there now. But this new deal for Bradley Beal is the worst contract in the league, and it's not particularly close for a lot of different reasons. So this is the contract breakdown. You can see that it is a supermax extension for Bradley Beal to stay in Washington. At certain points in the contract, he's going to be making over $50 million a year, but there's other details in here as well that make this contract even worse. So let's just talk about Bradley Beal as a player, because I think that oftentimes when a big contract gets attached to a player, people like to then almost underrate them. Like Otto Porter had a really bad contract for years when he was with Washington, but he wasn't a bad player. Like, he wasn't like Chandler Parsons level, not seeing the floor bad. He just wasn't worth the max that Washington gave him. And Bradley Beal is a very good player. He's an all-star caliber guy, made an all-NBA team a few seasons ago that made him eligible for this supermax extension. And he's a good scorer. He's a good playmaker, someone that it can be an offensive focal point of a pretty good NBA offense. That's about as far as we're going to go with positives here with Bradley Beal. I think we recognize that he's pretty good, okay? But let's really establish where he is within the hierarchy of the NBA, because I think oftentimes we throw around, oh, this guy's a top 15 guy, a top 20 guy, without ever really actually looking at the top 15 to the top 20. So let's look at a list. These are 15 players that in my mind, it is not a debate. Bradley Beal is not better, 100% not better than any of these 15 guys. In no order: Kevin Durant, Giannis, LeBron, Steph, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic.
Not better than Devin Booker.
No.
Bradley Beal not better than Devin Booker? I agree.
Sorry, Bill. I mean,
I agree.
But
shout out Jimmy Butler, though.
Anthony Davis.
Oh, Anthony Davis. Ouch.
Okay. 80's better.
Kawhi,
is
Paul
more
George,
reliable.
Anthony Davis, Devin Booker, Ja, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid.
Ja, Nikola, Joel, Damian Lillard.
Okay, all these guys are number ones on their team. But PG's not taking a team to the finals by himself. 80's not.
Did.
Who?
Paul George?
The Clippers?
He did it in Indiana.
Oh my gosh. They weren't going to win.
You about to get him there. It was a game away. That's tough, man. That's tough. Bradley Beal.
That was so long ago, though.
It's so crazy because there's probably maybe a couple other people you could say better than Bradley Beal. There's probably a couple other people you could say.
I'm waiting. Well, this list is 100% he's not better than.
Oh, yeah, 100%. All right, well, I mean, let's see what he says.
Be Damian Lillard. Those are all players that, in my mind, you cannot debate. There's no way you can have Bradley Beal above any of those guys. That's 15 players right there. Here's another 15 that I think it's very, very easy to argue you would take them over Bradley Beal. James Harden, Zach LaVine, Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, Chris Middleton, Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan, and Darius Garland.
Go back. Nah.
Ooh.
I'm taking Trae Young.
I'll take Trae. I'll take
Zach, no. Bam, no. Chris, no.
I'm taking Donovan Mitchell. I'm taking Donovan.
I understand that.
Maybe Jamal Murray too. Maybe Cat.
Chris Paul now?
Chris Paul now, no. But like regular season, yeah.
Regular
season, yeah. Who else is there?
Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, Carlin.
Oh, I'm taking DeMar DeRozan. I'm taking DeMar DeRozan for sure.
That's tough. DeMar DeRozan?
I'm taking DeMar DeRozan.
He had a good past season, but the Bulls didn't do nothing either.
Where was the Wizards?
Well, he got hurt, though. Beal got hurt.
Where they would have been even if he was playing?
I don't know. He only played 40 games.
Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan.
So just like the Bulls. With a better team.
These Bulls made playoffs. They just happen to run into Giannis. And
Anthony
they just so
Edwards?
happen to be injured. Anthony Edwards is crazy a little bit. Anthony Edwards is a little crazy. That's a stretch. Brandon Ingram, I feel like, is also a stretch. Darius Garland is definitely a stretch. I mean, but these are definitely, arguable. These are arguable. Chris Middleton. Jaylen Brown.
You put Beal with Giannis,
Instead
they
of Middleton.
win. They beat the Celtics this year.
Yeah, 100%.
They beat y'all, too.
They're probably the best team in the East. Beal, Giannis, and Drew?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably the best team in the East, for sure.
Jamal Murray, it's been so long, like a year and a half since he played.
But you know
Anthony Edwards Edwards had a great playoff series. I see why he's up there. Ingram, again, I see why he's up there because of the playoffs. Garland,
it's tough. That's tough. Pascal Siakam. You took a Siakam over Beal?
no, but I can see why people would.
Yeah.
Talking about success, but it is what it is.
And Darius Garland. That's 30 guys right there. You could very easily make an argument that Bradley Beal is not a top 30 player in the league. And again, he's going to be making over $50 million in his age 33 season. And honestly, the amount of money that he's making isn't even the main point of why this is such a bad contract. But even in a market where the salary cap is going to continue to increase and we're going to continue to see players making $40, $50 million a year, and you see players like Rudy Gobert making over $40 million a year, even in that context, this is too much for a guy that's arguably, again, not a top 30 player. And it's not like this is a player that, you could argue, oh, maybe he's top 20 and there's some really good analytics behind it and his team sometimes win. No, there's no history of Bradley Beal leading a team to anything other than like a 45-win season. There's no history of Bradley Beal as an individual taking a team to 50 wins. This is a franchise that doesn't know what a 50-win season looks like, and a franchise that Bradley Beal has been a part of for basically a decade at this point. And again, he just got $50 million a year on a supermax. Now, with that said, that's not the worst part. This is the part that pushed me over the edge and made me actually make this video and make it undeniable that this is the worst contract in the league, because Bradley Beal signing the extension was expected. I've talked about this in multiple videos leading up to the offseason. I've talked about it in free agency videos. Bradley Beal was always going to sign the extension because regardless of where he ends up in a few seasons, which I think is likely he's going to request a trade within the next season to 2 to 3 seasons, regardless of that, he was going to take the money. He was going to take the opportunity to get as much money out of Washington as he could. It's why he signed the 2-year extension a couple years ago, so he could get to this point in terms of his years of service in the league and then get his $250 million supermax extension. And by the way, I have no issue with that. If you're an NBA player and the majority of your earning potential in your life, comes in this like 10 to 12 year period, I absolutely think that you should maximize as much money as you can get and as much money as these teams are willing to pay you. That's totally fine. But if you're Washington, you have to protect yourself from that in some capacity. You have to either trade him 2 years ago and make sure you're not on the hook for $50 million a year for a guy that's not a top 30 player, or you have to look to trade him at whatever point you believe his value is the highest, because we all believe there's not a single person in the league that thinks about the league in a real way, that pays attention to it in any kind of real way, that thinks that Bradley Beal is going to finish this contract in Washington. In my opinion, it is a 0% chance. He made these comments about how his free agency decision was going to come down to where he can win. That place is not Washington. It has never been Washington, with the exception of like 148
he feels like
wins.
the Wizards are going to be... Well, he feels like they're going to build a championship team, though.
No.
I mean, if If you want to be honest, they got 5 years to do it with him.
He will never win a ring in Washington unless Kevin Durant went there. Even still, that's tough because the Wizards don't have nobody to get Kevin Durant.
I won't say they don't have nobody. It's just
who they giving up?
You could definitely make a big deal. It's just the Nets wouldn't accept it because the Nets are asking for
half the league,
half the world. Actually, they're asking for everything.
Let's see how this.
Season before the Kelly Olynyk game. Like, there is no history of them being legitimate championship contenders in the entirety of the time that Bradley Beal is there, and this is one of, if not the worst versions of what Washington has put together around Bradley Beal. So that comment about him wanting to go somewhere where he wants to win, that is him saying basically he's going somewhere else, whether it be the Lakers, whether it be Miami, whatever the case may be. If we don't see a Bradley Beal trade within 3 years, I would be absolutely shocked. And so Washington has to have at least some part of that in their mind when they decide to offer him a contract. And not only does the $50 million a year lower his value, not only does that make it harder for him to trade, but they actively put in...
If you shop on Amazon, you should use this tool. It's a browser extension that automatically...
Parts of this deal.
You can build it up to get that.
It's y'all's choice.
That make it harder for Bradley Beal to be traded and make it much more difficult for them to get actual value in exchange for him. Here's what I mean. There's a 15% trade kicker in this contract, which makes his contract more expensive if he does get traded. And this is the absolutely unbelievable part to me. This contract has a no trade clause. He's the only player in the entire league that has a legitimate, I can choose where I want to be traded to, no trade clause. Kevin Durant doesn't have it. LeBron doesn't have it. No player in the league has a no trade clause except for Bradley Beal. One, that doesn't make sense if he's not a top 30 player, and two, if he's one of the most likely all-star level players to be traded in the next 3 seasons, why would you give him a no trade clause? What this allows Bradley Beal to do is, let's say he was in the situation that Kevin Durant is in right now. Let's say that next year, the year after, he's got 4 years left on his contract, and he decides, you know what, Washington, this isn't really working out. I want to be traded. It's the exact situation Kevin Durant is in, except Kevin Durant is older and a better basketball player. In that scenario, Washington could only trade Bradley Beal to places he wants to be traded to. So if he wants to go to, in Kevin Durant's case, Miami and Phoenix, those are the only 2 teams that are going to bid against each other for Bradley Beal, which means that in no scenario are you going to get enough in exchange for Beal to actually help you build this team. Certainly not what you would have gotten a couple of years ago when he wasn't on this big contract and without a no trade clause. It's not just, oh, these are the teams that are interested. It's these are the only teams that can trade for him, because if you come to him with a trade offer from Memphis and he's like, no, I don't want to go there, he can just veto the trade. So you've given up any kind of leverage. You completely lowered his value by giving him this much money. And in my opinion, you didn't need to do certainly both of those things combined. If you went to Bradley Beal, who again is not a top 30 player, arguably, in the league, and said, hey, here's $250 million, by far the most you're going to get in free agency. Nobody can offer you close to this number. Here is $250 million, $250 million. And he says no, then don't even bother. Like, if the no trade clause was the thing that pushed this over the edge and you really show your loyalty to Bradley Beal, what are we doing? Like, there's no scenario in my mind where you go to Bradley Beal with $250 million contract offer and he says, you know what, yeah, I'm going to pass. This is a guy that has shown, again, I don't care that this is what he's chosen to do. I think it's the correct thing for him personally. He's shown for years now that his goal is to get as much money as he can out of every single one of these contracts. That's why he signed the 2-year extension a couple years ago, to get to this exact point in time, to get his years of service up to the point where he is eligible for the highest contract possible. So if you gave him $250, he's probably taking $250. You don't need to put the no trade clause in there, and by doing so, you have completely ruined what could have been a pretty promising trade opportunity for him over the next couple of seasons. Even if you were to offer him the $250 and you take it, I still don't think that that is a good number at all for Bradley Beal. I would have much rather them look to sign and trade him, or trade him a few years ago. But even in that scenario, with Bradley Beal making $50 million a year, there are teams around the league that, if they were in position to contend, would still give up a lot in exchange for Bradley Beal. And because of the long-term contract, he wouldn't have as much of a say, similar to the Kevin Durant situation, over where he ends up going in a trade. But giving him the no trade clause is indefensible. There's no scenario in which you can convince me it was necessary to retain him, or that it helps Washington in any way. So basically what Washington has done is they have given Bradley Beal the maximum amount of money that he is eligible for on a Supermax, and they have given him the maximum amount of leverage, the most trade-friendly contract they could possibly give him in terms of getting to where he wants to go, and also that team he's going to still being a really good basketball team after giving up less than equal value in exchange for Washington. Now, the contract is an issue. We've talked about it throughout the entirety of the video, but honestly, this is the most egregious part. Bradley Beal should not have been a Washington Wizard for the last 2 seasons. He just shouldn't have been. There comes a point where when you look at the situation of your team and you say, I don't think that we have any chance. There's no foreseeable path to us becoming a championship contender, and we have a, at the time, 27-year-old all-star caliber player that's got a year or two left on his contract that a ton of teams around the league would like to trade for. Let's go ahead and make this happen. Let's set ourselves up well for the future rather than best case scenario winning 45 games. At a certain point, you find yourself in that situation as a franchise, and that's where the Wizards were 2 years ago, and continually they do him favors. They give him 2-year extensions to get to this point. They give him a supermax with a trade kicker, with a no trade clause that almost no other team, arguably no other team in the league, would have done. And so here's what this tells me. This is the biggest confirming factor to me of the fact that Bradley Beal is not long for Washington. I think it's why partially he sat out the rest of the year, and obviously he was legitimately hurt, but he sat out the rest of the year so that he could get to this point, make sure that he got his money, and get his no trade clause. And if you want to make the argument that, well, this is their way of showing loyalty to Bradley Beal, at a certain point, like, if you're not a top 30 player, we can't win 50 games with you as the main guy. I don't care if you think that we're loyal to you. I would rather you just be better or be traded to a different team. That would be my mindset. What's the point of being loyal to the 32nd best player in the entire league and giving him more money than he's
32nd?
No, he keeps pushing that bar back on him, bro.
32nd.
Going from 15 to 30 to 32. What did Bradley Beal do to you, bro?
32nd is crazy.
Oh my goodness.
32nd. Oh, 32nd is crazy. I said like top 25, 20 to 25. But 32? You gonna look at me with a straight face and say Darius Garland is better than Bradley Beal? That's tough. That's tough.
actually worth, and a no trade clause. What's the point of that? Okay, we're loyal. That's not going to help you in future free agency decisions, and it's not going to help you get maximum value in exchange for Bradley Beal when he inevitably wants to be traded. Someone explain to me how this contract benefits Washington in any way, and why this scenario is better than them just trading him 2 years ago, and why this isn't the worst contract in the league. I
gotta look at the comments. I gotta look at the comments for this video.
I think, if you're going off contract base, his contract is up there with Luka Doncic, probably a top 5 player. Jokic just won back-to-back MVPs, just signed a contract that big. And Damian Lillard just signed a contract. But Dame, he's made to the conference finals. Beal hasn't. So I can see why there is animosity towards Beal, but this dude's lowering him to a top 32 player is kind of insane. Now, with the Wizards case, you did just trade for Porzingis. You drafted a young guard, Johnny Davis. In my eyes, he's not a 1. They need an elite point guard. You do have trade assets, though. You do have Denny Avdia, who proved to be like one of the best perimeter defenders last season, 3-and-D type players. You also have Rui Hachimura. You had Montrez, but you got rid of him. And then you just got Porzingis as well. So the Wizards, I feel like they have a lot of trade assets. They just got Will Barton, which is a decent, solid 15 points per game player, and Monte Morris. Like, they have the trade assets to go get an elite point guard. But I don't know. I mean, maybe De'Aaron could be on the board if, Sabonis and him don't work out.
Yeah.
Other than, I don't really know. I mean, Kyrie, would you really try to trade for Kyrie, though? Kyrie and Beal?
Nah, that's going to be...
So I don't really know, but what's Washington's plan? But if they I agree with the point. If they don't build like a contender in the next 3 years, then they should try to move him, but like he said, it's gonna be tough with that no trade clause.
It is gonna be tough, man. The Wizards, man. That's just Wizards being the Wizards. I thought it was gonna be like about multiple like things, but I guess it's just Bradley Beal. But I remember seeing this. I'm like, yo, they giving that man $250 million? Yo, that's crazy. But yeah, I think it's gonna wrap up this video, man. What you guys think down below? Let us know. Is this the worst contract of the offseason? Probably is. But if it isn't, you tell us what it is.
PJ Tucker's 3 years from the Sixers. He's gonna be 40 by the time that ends. That's in 3 years of PJ's kind of crazy.
Don't even remind me, bro, because jeez. But hey, man, until the next video, it's your boys Juice and Lou, and we out of here. Peace.